Hey y'all, welcome back to Mirror Expressions. This is a channel where I share a little bit of my thoughts, my expressions, my opinions with you through my own expressions. And I invite you all to come in and do the same with me. Take a moment, hit that like button, y'all. Turn around and then hit that subscribe button if you have not already. And don't forget to let me know how you're doing. So drop that mirror emoji down in the chat. If you looked in the mirror today and you feel A1 with what you see looking back at you. And if not, as always, I encourage you to do what you must to get back to a healthier you. So when you look in that mirror, yes, honey, you are A1 with what you see looking back at you. All right, y'all. Today, we are going to be reviewing and recapping Mr. Harrigan's phone. So, this is a movie on Netflix. Just came out not too long ago. I just so happened to watch it, and I really liked it. So, I just want to kind of get my take on it and talk to y'all about it. So, it was pretty good. It's originally a short story by Stephen King. And I think it's just kind of one of those movies that either you're going to like it or you're not. I don't think it's going to be too many gray areas with this movie. And the ending was kind of anticlimactic, right? But, I still liked it. But, hey, I'm also a fan of Stephen King's work. So I have several of his books in my library. So having this turned into a movie, I think it did it justice. As if you've read the short story, it pretty much just follows along with it. So, anyways, in the opening, we see this young man. He's running through the forest until he reaches the edge of what looks like to be a small ledge, but like it's still big enough or high enough for it to be dangerous. Like if he were to fall off of it. So, because down below, got the Castle Lake flowing below it. So, and he's just standing at the edge, and you could tell that he is obviously, like, there's obviously some type of conflict going on with him, right? So now at the same time that this is happening, we get like a scene of someone hitting the council button on the iPhone. Like, this is one of those original iPhones or the very old models. I thought I had one. I don't know. But anyway, one of those very old models where the it actually had like that cancel button in the middle that you could actually push. And so yeah, you can just kind of see that. So we get those two visuals kind of toggling back and forth between each other. And then we hear the narrator's voice for this the first time, which of course is the young boy that we saw running. So he says, when the gods want to punish us, they answer our prayers. And we didn't get to read that book. So all of that is just kind of foreshadowing what's to come. So it's 2003, right? And the movie begins with Craig, which is the boy that was running through the forest. He's telling us about Harlow, Maine, where he grew up. It's a very small village. There's not much there. And we learned that his mom has passed away at some point, and that it's just him and his father. Like, he was a little boy, a small boy when it happened. And so now it's just he and his father. And he wants to tell the story about how he went to work for Mr. Harrigan and the things that transpire afterwards. So they're at church service. And Craig, he's about 8 or 9 at this point. And so he gets to go up in front of the church and read the scriptures to the scripture passages from the Bible to the church family, right? So at some point, this old man comes in, and it's Mr. Harrigan. And he's like very loud, like he has this cane, and I'm guessing like the church is like wooden floor, so you can just hear him. It was just like very obvious, and it brought awareness to his arrival to the church because he was all late too. You know what I'm saying? Now, Mr. Harrison, he was considered to be a very odd man, antisocial. He didn't have many friends or any friends at all, it kind of turns out. And so he was just kind of like a loner. But he was also a billionaire, the only billionaire in their little village, matter of fact. So after this particular service, Mr. Harrison, he goes to see Craig and his dad because he wants to hire Craig to come read to him 3 times a week for only $5 an hour, y'all. That is not a lot. Even in 2003, that was not a lot. So $5 an hour. So Craig accepted, and he did this for several years, all the way up until he was in high school. And quite naturally, Craig and Mr. Harrison, they formed a special bond. Mr. Harrison would give him valuable advice. He would even send Craig lottery scratch-offs 4 times a year as a gift for Valentine's Day, his birthday, Thanksgiving, and Christmas, right? And he'd asked Craig once, like, why do you continue to come here and read for me? And Craig said, because he likes it and that he wants to. He likes the smell of his books. He likes reading to him. He likes learning from him. And so Craig, with his time there with Mr. Harrison, he noticed that there was a forbidden closet that he could never go into and that was never open, at least while he was there. So he one day was trying to go in there, and Mr. Harrison stopped him and asked him, like, what are you doing? And he says, you can't go in there. And so he says, but I'll answer any questions or whatever. And so Craig asked him, well, what's behind it? And so Mr. Harrison said, only secrets. So when Craig went on to high school, his freshman year, it wasn't that great, right? Because Craig, he's kind of a loner too. He doesn't have a whole lot of friends. And he is not the most social person out of the bunch, right? So all the kids in Harlow has to be bused to the nearby city to go to high school, right? Because there's only an elementary school and like a middle school in Harlow. So they all had to be bused to the nearest city to go to school. So being that he was a loner and kind of socially awkward himself, he became the object of bullying, specifically from this one guy named Kenny. So this is when he began to really want a cell phone. And he meaning Craig, right? So he started wanting a cell phone because apparently the cafeteria, which was a social hour, right? I'm guessing he just kind of wanted to fit in and be more social. The cafeteria was kind of split up with whatever kind of cell phone you had. Like, so for instance, you had like the small table of iPhone users, and it was a small bunch because this is when the first iPhones first came out. So not a lot of people had one, and if you did, you were considered elite, right? And so then there was like a table full of people that had like razors, a table full of people who had what was it called, like blueberries? I know it ain't blueberries. It ain't Burberry. Y'all know what it's all about. I don't know. But anyway, it was tables for different phones. You know what I'm saying? And so this is why Craig decided, he really wanted a phone. So he asked his father for one, and his father said no. You know what I'm saying? They didn't have a lot of money to play around with. They just led a very modest life, and a cell phone was not on the priority to have. So meanwhile, Kenny, he's still bullying Craig, which one of his teachers would kind of come to his aid whenever she spotted it, and that was Miss Hart. So Craig would never rat Kenny out, even when they would get caught like in the midst of him being mean to Craig or whatever. He would still just kind of take up for him. And he did this because he feared that Kenny would, be even mean to him, whoop that ass even more. And pretty much he did that anyway without him snitching on him, right? So for Christmas that year, Craig finally gets a big payment out on one of the scratch offs that Mr. Harrington's always sends for him, right? So he got $3,000 to be exact. And then he also receives an iPhone from his dad. So, of course, Craig is excited. And the first thing he does when he gets back to school is he goes sit with the cool kids with the iPhones in the cafeteria. Right? And so in this bunch, like I said, it was a small bunch, but in this bunch was this one particular girl that he had a crush on. So with the money from the lottery winning, he puts most of it away for college. But he also turns around and buys Mr. Harrington an iPhone. Now, Mr. Harrington was very particular, I'll say, in the things that he liked and tolerated, right? He lived by the motto, we don't own things, things own us. So he kept it very simple. So like he didn't have any TVs in his home, no radios, because, it took time away that could be utilized elsewhere. So in a more productive manner, right? So of course, this iPhone thing, he was not having any of it. He wanted nothing to do with it, no parts of it, until Craig began to show him all the things he could do with it, like watch the stock market, which, he was very much into, or read his newspaper a day earlier than what he would get when he had it delivered. So he ended up teaching him how to text, how to make calls, and then they even had like a special ringtone for just the two of them, so they would know when each other called. And it was Stand By Your Man by Tammy Wynette. So after having it a while, right, Mr. Harrington, he made the point that these smartphones will become more problematic in the future than they were good, because it was just a foretelling situation, so to speak, because he said that they will begin to make so many different things obsolete, and that they will be used to spread information that isn't true or reliable, and so on and so forth. So all the things that he was saying was pretty much true. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, one day Craig goes to read to Mr. Harrington as usual, right? So he lets himself in. He finds that Mr. Harrington had gone up to glory, y'all. He was gone. He was no longer here on earth with us. So he tries to wake him up, like he's shaking him. He checks his breath. He checks for any sign of breath, like he got a little mirror, and he held it up under his nose to see if he could see, like the mirror fog up, and it just appeared that he was gone. He was gone. And it was nothing, Craig could do. So he notices that it appears that Mr. Harrington had been maybe trying to call him, because he still had a cell phone in his hand, and Craig's number was pulled up. Like it even starts ringing when Craig was in the room. When Craig kind of tried to move the phone, it's like Mr. Harrington's hand kind of pushed down, and it run through to Craig while he was there. So Craig gets the phone out the hand, and he just kind of mindlessly puts it in his pocket, right? And he immediately calls his father, let him know that, hey, I think Mr. Harrington gone. And so his father was just like, let me get medical attention over there ASAP. And his dad tells Craig to go wait outside for like the ambulance or whatever, but he don't do that. While he's waiting for the ambulance, Craig instead sits down. He begins to read A Tale of Two Cities to Mr. Harrington. And this is a very poignant detail, because if you're familiar with the story of A Tale of Two Cities, then you'll know why by the end of the movie, right? So he's gone, and at the burial, a man ends up approaching Craig and his dad, because of course they went to pay their respects. And so this man lets him know that he was kind of Mr. Harrington's financial advisor, and then Mr. Harrison had left something for Craig, right? And so then he hands him a letter. The letter basically said that Mr. Harrison has left Craig $800,000 in a trust to pay for his college, his postgraduate goals, and for him to have a head start in his career. I said, talking about, whoa, can somebody do that for me? I take it now, baby. Like, what was that when I was going through college 2 times? Like, or getting a head start in my career. Oh my goodness, such a blessing. So anyway, it's at that point that like the first weird thing really happens, right? So Craig is reading this letter, and at the end of the letter, right, he wrote, wait a minute, let me back up. I'm getting ahead of myself. So let me back up just a little bit. So now the day that Craig had found Mr. Harrington, he sent him a text because, this is like he had just made it home. He's just kind of processing his feelings, right? So he ends up sending Mr. Harrington a text saying, that he's going to miss their time together because, he loved him. They had formed a relationship. And it was also at this time that Craig realized that he still had Mr. Harrington's phone in his pocket, right? Because the phone starts ringing, buzzing through. So it stands out. Now we're back to when Craig is reading this letter from Mr. Harrington, right? So, mind you, he sent him this text saying he's really going to miss their time together. So now Craig is reading this letter about how Mr. Harrington has left him $800 in a trust, blah, blah, blah. And at the end of the letter, Mr. Harrington signed it, "I'm going to miss our time together too." When it was like he was responding to that text that Craig had sent earlier the day that he found him gone, right? So Craig, of course, is looking spooked, like, what the hell? You know what I'm saying? Like, how is he responding to my text message? And so later that night, Craig ends up calling Mr. Harrington's phone, and he leaves him a voicemail saying how much he misses him and all of this. And so then the next morning, he wakes to a text from Mr. Harrington's phone. Yo, I said, oh my gosh. And so the text didn't say much, but the fact that it was from his number was enough. It said something like CCCAA. And so Craig took that to mean like the C's were standing for his name. And so he's now thinking that they don't bury the man alive. So, and he's thinking this because we find out that Craig slipped the cell phone into Mr. Harrington's suit pocket at the funeral, right? And so he's thinking that by the phone being in the casket, that Mr. Harrington is texting because he's still alive and he's trying to reach out from the casket to get somebody to come and get him, right? So this is what Craig is thinking. So he runs and he tells his dad that, hey, Mr. Harrington, he's still alive. He texts me at 2:30 in the morning. We got to go dig him up and save him. And so his dad is like, no, that's not true. It can't be true. And so he tells Craig to sit down. He lets them know that they actually did an autopsy on Mr. Harrison just because of the way he was found in the home. And that his dad did not want to tell him then because he just knew it would be kind of hard for him to know that happened to Mr. Harrison. And his dad just kind of chops it up to the phone being hacked and someone just playing a prank. So time is passing on, right? Craig, he's doing well in school, but he's still being bullied by Kenny. And Kenny ends up getting expelled for selling drugs on the school property. So it's the night of their winter dance. Craig is all excited. He got the day he wanted with the girl he was crushing on with the matching iPhone. But Kenny ends up ruining planning the dance for Craig because he ended up showing up, right? And again, he's expelled. But he ends up showing up, finding Craig, beating him up. And although he did get a good punch in following Mr. Harrington's advice, Kenny left him mangled up outside on the school ground. Now, Kenny did all this because he felt like Craig was the one that snitched on him that he was selling the drugs. And in essence, he feels that Craig was the one that got him expelled from school. Never mind that it was your own nasty behavior that got you expelled. But anyway, so Craig's favorite teacher, Miss Hart, ends up finding him. Like I said, she's always seems to be the one that kind of comes in and saves him. So she found him. She helped clean his wounds up. And so while she's doing this, Craig actually seemed like he was baby crushing on him. But baby, this thing seemed like he was mesmerized. He was just like, while she was cleaning him up. So he ends up, telling her that she smelled good. And he asked her, what are you wearing? And she's just like, nothing but soap. So she ends up saying, it's a special type of soap, something like Old Bay. I don't know. It was like a special brand, not your typical thing that you could just find in the store. So anyway, so Craig, she's trying to get him to tell on Kenny, but Craig, he doesn't want to, because one thing he mentioned since Kenny was expelled, that this will have to go to court because he was on school property when he shouldn't have been, and that Craig doesn't want to have to testify against him and go to court and then it be put out that he got Kenny in even more trouble. So he kind of just wants things to go away. So when Craig makes it home, he's still angry about what happened, and his dad is asking him about it, right? And he doesn't want to talk to his dad about it. So his dad just said, he just kind of encourages him that, well, I know you don't want to talk to me, but you need to talk to someone about it. You need to find someone that you can talk to. So Craig kind of takes that advice, and so he goes in and he calls Mr. Harrington's phone, right? And he tells him all about the fight. Now, mind y'all, he's doing this like on a voicemail. Like when he's talking to him, if he's calling him and talking to him, he's like leaving it on a voicemail. So he's telling him about the fight and how he's afraid that the bullying will not end. And so the next day, Craig ends up getting a text from one of his friends, right, that said that Kenny was gone. He was deceased. He was deceased as well. So apparently he'd fallen from his window and broke his neck, right? And when they showed him on the ground, y'all, he was in that same awkward position that he had left Craig at when he beat him up. Like when Craig was all mangled, because he was like crisscross, and it was just like he was in this funky looking position. And that's how Kenny was when they found him, in that same exact position. So Craig ended up seeing this, right, because Craig and some of the friends, they get in the car and they drive over to where Kenny lives, and they just kind of watching from afar. So anyway, Craig, he starts to get suspicious that something's up, and he's feeling a little guilty that he may have had something to do with what happened to Kenny, right? So he decides to look more into things and do some research. So he wants to visit this guy that used to work for Mr. Harrison and find out what happened with him. So he's thinking it may all be connected some way. And so he goes over to where the guy is. Or is supposed to live, right? So he ends up, a neighbor is just like, nope, he's not there anymore. He went into the this garage right there, turned the car on, and let the door down. And so Kenny is just, not Kenny, but so Craig is just like, well, god dang, he gone too? Like, why is everybody seemingly disappearing now, losing their life? So on the back of the garage door, the guy had painted FUH on it. before he went into the garage and offed himself, right? And so I'm sure all of y'all can kind of figure out what that means, right? So Craig tells Mr. Harrington again, he calls him again, right? And asks him if he had anything to do with all the weird things that's been happening, like Kenny happening to fall out his window. So Craig ends up receiving a phone call back from Mr. Harrison, which he doesn't answer. And then so Mr. Harrington sends a text. And this is just, again, another string of letters. This time it said like, it was like AACC something, it was just a string of text, right? So Craig decides he's had enough and he goes to upgrade his phone to a newer model so he can get rid of the old phone. So the guy at the phone store said the original iPhone had some glitches due to it being rush production, right? So he likened it to a ghost in a machine. Also another kind of foreshadowing thing. So Craig decides to keep the old phone and he ends up hiding it away in a box that he kept at the top of his closet. So he's moving forward. He got accepted into the college that he wanted to go, which happened to be the same college that his favorite teacher, Miss Hart, went to. So, we see him. He done graduated. He's away at school. And at some point while at college, he receives a message that Miss Hart and her fiance were in a terrible accident. Unfortunately, it was fatal for her. She didn't make it. Her fiance, he's still in the hospital, and he's got so much going on to the fact that he didn't even make it to the funeral. And then here's the driver, which was drunk at the time, that hit them head on. He walked away with absolutely no bruises and was sent to a luxurious sober house. Right? So, of course, this just angers Craig, right? Because he came back home for the funeral, obviously. And so he immediately pulls out their phone. Like he goes digging in his closet, he throwing things out until he got to their phone. He charges it up, and then he sends a message to Mr. Harrington that he wants that drunk driver gone. And you know what I mean by gone, right? So soon he finds out, he's back at school, and he finds out that the drunk driver has lost his life, supposedly at his own hands, right? He swallowed a bar soap. And it was the same exact soap that Miss Hart used, that special name brand that she had to go to the next city over and get it because it's not sold in the regular stores. That soap. It was that soap. He had swallowed it, choked on it, and passed away. He did leave what they thought was a goodbye note, but it really was nothing but the lyrics to that song. Mr. Harrington's favorite song that was his and Craig's ringtone for each other, right? So now Craig, he's feeling super guilty now, right? Especially this time around because he asked for him to be off, and then he did. So he visits Mr. Harrison's home, and he finally goes into the secret closet, right? And Craig realizes that they really share the same secrets. Mr. Harrington's closet contained mementos of he and his mother. His mother had passed away when he was a boy as well, just like Craig had lost his mother when he was a young boy. And so Craig said he now understands why Mr. Harrington chose him to read out of everyone else he could have asked, because he did say there were like older people he could have asked. There were better readers he could have asked, but he asked him. And so he says he understands now they were kind of one and the same. He understood the loneliness, the feelings of not having their mom, so they shared a lot with that. And Craig ends up receiving one last text, and it says CCCST, right? So Craig ended up visiting the grave of Mr. Harrington, and he's sitting down, and he's just kind of spilling his guts to him. He says he gets it now. CCST means Craig, stop. So Craig surmises that he wants him to stop because he's either hurting Mr. Harrigan or he's hurting himself. Craig tells Mr. Harrigan he can now rest, and he gets him now, so he's gonna stop. As he leaves Mr. Harrigan's grave, he stops by his mother's grave. He finally visits her because at the beginning of the movie, we learned that he's never visited her because then it would make it real to him that she's never coming back. So he kind of breaks down on her grave site as well, and he apologizes to her too. So this brings us back to the opening scene, right? Where we see Craig running through the woods until he comes to that little ledge. And so he's standing there. He looks like he's about to just fall over or jump over, like his little feet they're literally hanging over the edge of the cliff, right? So we see him, he takes this deep breath, and instead of jumping, he ends up throwing that phone as far out into that water as he can. And this is the very first one, the original iPhone, the one that he was communicating with Mr. Harrigan on, right? Because like he told Mr. Harrigan, he can rest now, he can have his peace, he gets it now. So he tosses it in the water. Then he pulls out his current phone, the current phone that he uses. And he ends up taking that hand back like he's about to toss that one too. But then he immediately changes his mind and puts it in his pocket, puts it back into his pocket. So then we get to hear in his narrative that he says our phones are what weds us to the world. And he says that when it's his time to go, he for certain wants his pockets empty. And y'all, that was the end. Like I said, it was very anticlimactic at the end, but it had like a lot of meaning to it. I really liked this movie, and it just kind of touched on how we can be attached to things. Like I love that saying that Mr. Harrigan said when he said, "We don't own things, they own us." And that is so true. Like I do think that things like that can consume so much of our time. Like even in my home, I don't like TVs in the bedrooms for that very reason. Like, they can be such a distraction. Now, I'm not going to say anything else because I do have my fair share of electronics and I do partake in them. But I do feel like it can be very consuming. Like, even now, like, I'm just not much of a phone person. Like, I would rather much talk to somebody in person because I also feel like when I'm on the phone, I feel like I need to engage with whomever I'm talking to. Like I can't halfway be there. So I'm giving you all of my attention or none of my attention, if that makes sense. Because that's just how I operate. So if I'm giving you all of my attention, then therefore I feel like I'm taking time away from something else that I could be doing versus just sitting here idly talking to somebody. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, so some aspects I get that. And when at the end, Craig was just saying like how our phones are what wed us to the world. They do. They keep us so connected through not just being able to make calls and receive them, but like just having the internet at the touch of a fingertip. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, so I just think that kind of just shed a lot of light on that aspect of things, and then just showing that connection between Mr. Harrigan and Craig and how they came full circle. Like even when Craig took the time to read A Tale of Two Cities, you know, there was such a stark difference in the two cities, but then it really wasn't. There was really so much alike. And that's kind of how I see Mr. Harrigan and Craig. Like there's a lot of differences in them, but then if you just take all that fluff away, they're really one and the same. You know what I'm saying? So anyways, I like the movie. I think it's worth y'all watching it if you haven't seen it. And let me know what you think. Or if you read the story, you know what I'm saying? Let me know what you think. And if you read the story and watched the movie, let me know did y'all feel like the movie did the book pretty much justice. Like usually if I read a story or a book and then they come out with a movie, like I don't usually enjoy the movie because y'all know books are so much more detailed. And I love that about books because you get to use your own imagination with how, along with the pictures they're painting. And so you kind of lose that when it gets to a movie, you know what I'm saying? So, but like I said, I feel like they did this one pretty good. They did it justice. So I just want to hear y'all thoughts, and y'all go check it out. That's all I got, y'all. Until next time, I'll pray for you. You all please continue to pray for me. And we will what? Bye, y'all.